Hi, welcome to my channel where we provide an alternative view to the common narrative. You know, when I started this channel, I thought I will try to do something totally different from what I'm doing now. But one of the call it playlists that I created was why I disagree with so and so and so, and I actually had the most fun with that. So and then I decided, no, I'm not going to do that anymore because it's a more negative type of presenting videos. But at the end of the day, they do discuss certain things, and it gives you food for thought, and you can see it basically as a debate where unfortunately the other party can't respond. So, but it was fun, and it made me think about certain matters, and I did enjoy it. And the purpose of the channel is to enjoy making videos. So today I'm going to talk about a guy called Simplicity. It's a nickname. He writes articles on Substack and so forth, and you know, the articles he writes are well written. It's a nice story. Most of the times I don't agree with him. He looks like he has some experience in analysis in the military. I'm not sure if he was a military officer or served in the military. I don't think so, but it doesn't really matter. Now, if you listen or read it, it looks fair. There's nothing wrong with the article itself, but it becomes when you think a little bit deeper about that, and that is what I'm trying to do today. I've read many of his articles, just like the Duran. You know, they play to their audience, and I've got no problem with that. So let's get to the point. The specific article that I'm referring to is about whether there were two Western sources and videos made who discussed the composition of the Russian forces, and that Russia basically have created new assault groups, and also they make the statement that Russian units to platoon levels and so on and lower are NCO deficient, and that they are mostly run by officers. And Simplicity argues that no, due to reforms, it's a little bit unclear. There were major reforms in the Russian army in 2008. When one article, one paragraph, it says that about 150,000 NCOs were removed from the Russian military, but then later on restored by Sorodikin or something like that. So I'm not totally sure what happened, when, and so on, but it doesn't really matter. He says that the Russian army does have NCOs. It is officer heavy. Most of the platoons and groups are actually commanded by officers. And we're talking about lieutenant and upwards. Now, if all of these things are true, then I have to conclude, based on my own experience in the military, that the Russian army is nothing more than a number of idiots, or controlled by idiots, that have modern technology, superior modern technology, an oversupply of equipment and artillery. And that is what it is. And that has granted them the current successes that they have achieved in the Ukrainian conflict. On the other side, you have the Ukrainian forces. They are also trained in the original US Soviet Union doctrine, and they lack the same type, or they experience the same type of problems than the Russian forces, because they are the same. Well, there's a slight difference in that they have been trained by American US instructors to conform more to NATO standards. And the difference in this respect is actually that the units of the lower level leadership is usually controlled by sergeants, NCOs, and the Russians are mostly controlled by officers. Why this is, I don't understand this. Really. First off, let me explain it to you, the South African Army and my experience. In South Africa, you did 2 years of conscript military service. It was first 1 year, and then later on was changed to 2 years and so on. And it's not because you needed 2 years of training, no. Our South African Army was about 110,000 men. And South Africa used its conscript to serve on the border and in the conflict in Southwest Africa, Namibia, called now, and in Angola. And the conscript army was basically the biggest part of our standing army. South Africa couldn't afford a standing army, which is all right. At the end of the day, a conscript army is there to train your population to function later on as reserves and expand your manpower should you ever come into a conflict, a proper conflict, a big size one. So we all had some military training, but naturally we were also the workforce or the leadership of the economy, so you couldn't withdraw so many men at any given time. That would have collapsed the economy, but our conscript had a significant impact on our economy. And apart from that, you still had to do 10 years of a month or 3 months per year of military service. We call them camps. And in these camps, you might serve on the border or in Angola, or you might serve in terms of controlling our black community residential areas against any riots or so. So most of us had experience. And let me explain to you how our system worked. Well, before I start, I actually wanted to say that NCOs are non-commissioned officers. Those are usually your corporals, your sergeants, your staff sergeants, and etc. Officers were usually your lieutenants, 1-star lieutenant, 2-star lieutenants, captains, major, commandant, and then brigadier and so on. Now, in South African context, you had a corporal, and a corporal will be in charge of 8 men or 9 men. Then you would have a sergeant that would be in control of a platoon, which is 3 sections. That means he has 3 corporals underneath him, and he has about 30 men underneath him. Then you have the lieutenant, and the lieutenant is in command of the platoon. And then 3 platoons is controlled by a senior sergeant or a staff sergeant, and by a captain. And so you go upwards, and the major will sometimes also function in the form of a company, which a company is, the captain is a company, and he has 3 platoons, it's about 100 men. And then a major will also feature in that respect. Well, you have several companies under him. And when it becomes bigger size, like a brigade, then we have a commandant. I don't know what the English word would be for that. And then we go up the echelon and so on. That's not really important. Now, in this article, he states that you can only become an officer if you go to a military school and obtain a degree. In Russia, all officers have a 5-year education, 5 years at varsity or training institute, and then they obtain a degree, 5 years. And the NCO apparently has a 3-year training. And in America, if you are a sergeant, you come up through the ranks from a grunt, but the officer has to go to a military academy, and he also has to study there 3 or 5 years. I'm not sure. And in America, the sergeant can attain certain grades, like Sergeant 1, Sergeant 2, or Sergeant Level 3, and I don't know, it goes more or less like. And he's in charge of a squad, and the squad can be a platoon, or I don't know. But he's in sole control of that, and the officers are only higher up. And that is more or less how the system works. Where the Russians, the commander, the platoon is run by a lieutenant and only by a lieutenant. And apparently that has now changed. Now, I cannot see how anything of these things can work, or any modern military army can be structured like that. Now, in this article, there is naturally Michael Kaufman, who is an academic, who always talks about compositions of army and so on. But you can clearly see that all of these guys have no experience in military service or combat experience, because if they had, they would have talked totally different. Totally different. And before I even start about the military, let me explain it also. I am a graduate, I have a master's degree in engineering. And I first went to school, and then I went to the varsity, obtained my degree. And then I went to the army. Some people will actually go after school directly to the army in terms of conscription. I did it after my studies. Now, what we had is I went to the intelligence school, where we learned to process intelligence and so on. From my engineering colleagues, they went to the infantry school, and they served there. Now, in my intelligence service, you had to have the matric, which is a grade 12 qualification. If you didn't have a grade 12, you were posted out to a different type of unit. Oh, shit. The point is, before I wanted to actually start with the military, I wanted to say that when I graduated, I thought to myself, hey, you're now an engineer, you can solve all problems, and if you haven't got the theory, you can work it out in terms of based on intelligence. And the first day I started work, I got back to ground and I realized I knew nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because in South Africa, we have two types of post-school education. We have the universities, and then we have colleges. And you can be an engineer from a university, or you become an engineer from a college. Now, the difference is that at a university, the engineer learns basic principles, and he can solve basically every problem that he encounters from basic engineering principles. He's supposed to be able to deduct equations and stuff like that from basic principles. In the college, you become a guy that learns how to use formulas. So the intellectual requirements from a varsity is much higher than from a college. But there's also a huge difference in application between these things. The one is a theoretical guy, and the other one is a practical guy in terms of applying technology. The other one is developing technology. But because I came from a varsity, and when I started work, I believed, hey, I could do anything. And like I said, first day around, I got back to ground and realized I knew nothing. Nothing. Because what theory says and what practicing says is two different things. Now, coming back to the story about the officer, if they graduate from West Point and so on, or any academy, they know nothing. Those officers know about theory. And the question is, what theory? Second World War history? Second World War strategy? What do they learn there? I don't know. Doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, war is war, and war is what you see on the ground, not something that you learn in the textbook. You adapt your tactics and strategy based on what you see on the ground. If the guy has artillery backing, then you have to have a totally different strategy as when your enemy doesn't have the artillery backing. Or you have the backing, and in the one case you don't have it. or you have air support, or you don't have air support. Or the enemy has it. I mean, every situation in any war condition changes. And there is no fixed plan and fixed strategy. There are some basic rules that you have to apply. Yes, that's true. You know, don't stand in the open. Go hide behind a rock. You know, don't hide behind a car. If you want to hide behind a car, go hide behind the engine block or the wheel up. But if you go behind the passenger car door, that bullet will travel right through the car, thin steel sections, and hit you on the other side. There is no protection on that. So what are you going to learn for 5 years or for 3 years? You are wasting people's lives. And you're overqualifying them. So in South Africa, it works a little bit different. And it's a much more optimized version and effective versions. Because we were excellent bushfighters. We had our corporals, like I said, 8 men. When we had our sergeant, that's a platoon, and he was assisted by a lieutenant. A lieutenant that was trained within 9 months. The first 3 months of our training was basic boot camp, and then we had 6 months of training. Now, since we had a bush war, we were trained to do bush war. But if we were explained for urban deployment, we would have learned urban tactics as well. Now, I did both of them, but not fully. The one was more like, the urban one was like more for patrolling, not like a urban assault or stuff like that. But if we had done it, we would have been trained for that as well. And we were all conscripts, not permanent. So after my friends, which is the best example that they will get, they will have a boot camp and they will have 6 months of officer training in terms of weapons handling and tactics and how to control people and strategies and how we whatever we should do if we are an assault team. And mostly we were patrols and assault teams. And then one day, that is what necessary was. And after that, and then you will get a troop, then you will get your normal troops. We had basic camps. And in these basic camps, what did they learn? The basic troops, the infantry, the grunt. They learned how to march and PT and so on, and then they had to learn how to maintain their weapon systems. And then they had to learn how to handle various groups, various weapon systems. And then how to do an attack, a coordinated attack, or the basic requirements, what was needed in the field, the strategies. How do you approach an army? How do you fire mortars and RPGs and stuff like that? How did you fire ambush? How to do an ambush? How to walk in formation for different scenarios, not only one formation, but various formation. And that is all what was required. And after 3 months, they were assigned this, my friends that had 9 months of training as officers, and they went to the border. And they served in the border in the conflict area for the next, 21 months until they left. And they were soldiers. And they took part in operations. And if they needed extra training for a specific combined military movement and this, which we had, then they were trained in that, there, on the border. You know, a grunt is nothing more than an expendable bullet. Grunts die in numbers. And officers that support them in a platoon die in numbers. Sergeants die in numbers because they are right in the firing range and they are subject to artillery fire, tank fire, enemy fire, small arms, machine guns. Their life expectancy is not that long, so why waste 5 years of training on them? To learn what? What do you need to assault a trench? What do you need? Come on, people. What weapons do you have available? That's the most important question you have to ask yourself. Do you have artillery cover support? Do you have it? How many people are there in your enemy in those trenches? What cover is available up to the trenches? Are there mines planted, personal mines planted in front of the trenches? Is there any barbed wire? Is there any other things? Things that you have to consider when you see it, when you plan it. I don't know why these people come up with their years long of training. Our sergeant knew how to operate weapons. What did we need? We need an RPG, how to operate an RPG-7 or our own shoulder launched FT5 or so. What else is there for a grunt to learn? Or in any infantry? Unless you start doing urban cleaning, urban attack, then you have to have different techniques. And in a Russian SMO context, the Chechen were there. They were specialized in that field. But then, it's still a matter of, doing the hard work. And in our case, our lieutenants don't sit back. They are there with the platoons. So let me again explain in our experience. So, before, in our training, we had to do field work, which is, it's supposed to be like that in any case. So we go to the field, and we do our training there, and we get a normal, we get each a platoon of men, normal conscript guys that haven't gone past the officer course yet. So they are fairly intelligent, but still they're not lieutenants yet. Now I'm a lieutenant, and I'm going to get my troops. And now I have to go and command them. And then I have the sergeant. Now, in our army, the sergeant and the lieutenant are the last people just to get rest or sleep on any occasion. The grunts are picking out, they are on guard duty and whatever in the field. And while the grunts are eating and sleeping, the sergeant and the lieutenant are planning and doing their duties. Now, in the Russian army, this guy simplicity says, yeah, but the officers are responsible for the grunts, barracks works, and so on and so forth. Not in my case. There is not enough time. The sergeant has to do it. I have other responsibilities as officers. I had to do the next strategic attack planning, or whatever was required of me, what we're going to do the next day. Planning logistics, or planning the coordination with the other teams, or planning with how we're going to approach a target, or whatever. That was my work, and it kept me busy, because you have to think about everything. I don't have time to listen to Grant's mama and papa grievances and all this other crap, and does he have enough food or not. At the end of the day, if you look back, the sergeant is the mother of the company, and the lieutenant is the father of the family. Now, if you look at traditional families, that is how it is, not the modern crap that you get. The father takes the responsibility, the lieutenant takes the responsibility, and the day-to-day welfare of the troops is a mother's case, and that is the sergeant. And they both have to work together. And they are in a group of 30 men. And if they are in a group of 30 men and you attack and assault the group, then you can be shot just like any of the other men, and you can be killed. And there's 5 years of training down the drain. How are you going to replace that officer? Hey, how much do you... No. I actually talked about the story about Saving Private Ryan in the movie. It's a good example. So the guy was a teacher, and he was called up, drafted. And he became a lieutenant, if I remember correctly, or a captain, I'm not sure. But it doesn't matter, he was an officer in the American army. And he commanded the platoon. had to do the groundwork, and he had a sergeant. Where did he get his training? Did he do a 3-year, 5-year degree at any institution? No. Because that's not what is required. And our officers got extra training as they progressed from lieutenant to captain because they were changing their approach and what their responsibility was. If I had 30 men under myself and being a platoon, that's a totally different when I have a company under myself, 3 platoons, plus a flippin' motor unit, plus, well, in modern times, you're going to have a UAV motor, plus you have to have whatever, anti-tank sections. Your LMGs and so on are usually in your sections. There's usually in each section an LMG. For the 8 men, there is one LMG group of 2 men and the rest are riflemen. So I don't know what this bullshit is coming about military tactics or military flipping education or military. If the Russians don't have NCOs, then they are fucked. Then there are, like I said, a lot of people with a lot of weapons and ammunition and technology, but no clue in how to operate it. They're going hogwash. This article describes about how the Donbass militia graduate. Those Donbass militias are much more experienced and capable of fighting the enemy than any of the standing army of the Russians. Or the Ukrainians, for that matter. There's a huge difference between theory and practice. And circumstances always change. Because like I said, weapon systems change. Weapon systems availability changes. Do you have it or don't you have it? Do you have artillery support? What are you going to do about artillery attack? I had a major. He was like a Rambo. Small guy. Bulky. He was like a Rambo. I always remember it. So one practice, I was the assistant to the LMG. He was running with the LMG down the field. The platoon was attacking from the one side, and we were running up this slope in order to get into a fire position for the LMG to keep cover protection or cover fire. And he was wielding this heavy gun. He was running in a small gun first. And the other guy was wearing the belts and so on. I was supposed to be the support guy. So that means when the LMG gets stuck and so on and I have to reload, then I can give covering fire with my normal rifle and so forth. But in any case, this major and so on, he told us about some scenes on what he experienced. And he once went to a NATO exercise here in Europe. And he was walking along the fields, and these guys fucked up all the farmlands, in any case, in exercise. But that's beside the point. So he gets to this tree, and below this tree sits a US grunt. And the guy says, "Listen here, what are you doing?" "No, what's it, that 40 millimeter round beneath the rifle?" Okay. "This thing is broken," he says. I said, "But why are you sitting here?" "No, the thing is broken." I said, "But you got a rifle." "No, he's a specialist. He doesn't do things like that. So his buddies are doing the rifle work. He's a specialist." What the fuck? I mean, he's got a rifle. That's never going to happen in South African Army. No, he's a specialist. So other story that the major told us and so on, they were approaching doing some maneuver in the field, and then they come on a artillery on a mortar fire, and they said, "Yo," and it was heavy, and they were shooting or bombarding or whatever you want to call it with mortar fire the shit out of them. So I asked him, "How many people died?" Oh yeah, he said, "But they were digging foxholes with their It's a sort of a bakkie where you eat with, aluminium bakkie. Any case, with the utensils. So they were digging with this thing, a foxhole. And I asked him, how many people died of the group? He said, none. I said, what? The mortars are falling around you. No, nobody died. So, ask yourself, how are you going to storm a trench? How are you going to cross open country to access those trenches? How are you going to, what training you require to do that? You're running over open field. No, you don't do that. You ask for artillery fire. You weaken the spot. You bring in your snipers and let the snipers take up strategic points. And then if you have to do open ground, you do, well, in South Africa we call it vuurenbeweging. It's like staggered attack. I've explained in my previous videos. I don't know, there are probably other tactics as well, but you will learn that once you are in that position. Or you will learn it from somebody else who has already the experience about that. But fighting experience you attain on the battlefield. And 5 years training is superfluous. If you want to become a general, sure, 5, 6 years total training. Every time you want to jump a rank, you have to go training. Sure, that is what you have to do because your situation changes. But as a lieutenant or a sergeant on the front line with your troops, you're a target just like any other grunt. And you will lose your life easily. So these guys must be easily replaceable with just sufficient training and experience. And conscripts do apply for that. Because I'm still an officer and I still can do that work. Well, I'm too old in any case, but that's beside the point. So I've listened to all this other crap and I read these articles and it sounds nice. Been there, done that. Have you been? No. So, that's my story for today. Until next time. Cheers.